Lesbian Detectives. Unsolved cases. She's still missing. Yeah, they haven't found her yet. Well, let's talk about it.
They say he vanished without a trace. Could it be a psychotic break or a tragic accident? Police don't know where the body went. Unsolved murders, body still missing. That's unheard. Where's the witness? Lesbian detectives, what's going on? City on high alert, this out the norm. He did what, the who? Man, that ain't real, these crimes ain't true. Then come uncover these theories with us. We live right now, tuning in is a must.
Lesbian Detectives. Lesbian Detectives. We about to start the show, so get your popcorn ready to go. Pay attention to the message. I present to you the Lesbian Detectives.
This is Lesbian Detectives. I'm Sierra.
And I'm Elizabeth.
And we are here talking about missing and unsolved murders.
We are discussing cases that you have forgotten about or never even heard of.
So sit back, relax, and let's join this podcast. Happy Valentine's Day. And I don't know if you guys see, we are in our Valentine's Day colors. I have on, if you can't see me on YouTube, I have on like a cute little white sweater with like red hearts.
And I just have a red sweater. Remember what they say though. If they take you out on Valentine's Day, you're the girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
If they take you out the 13th or the 15th, you're the side piece.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't take you out, you're the wife.
Basically. And I'm not taking her out on Valentine's Day. Actually, I'm taking out my daughter. She's 2. And I sort of actually do match, guys. Watch out for this weekend. I'll be posting me and her mostly on our YouTube, on TikTok, on Instagram. So please check out. She's going to be so adorable. I have to put a little happiness because this case right here is a big trigger. So I'm going to put the trigger out. If you do not want to hear about essay on somebody at the age of 12 or younger, please skip this episode. It is very traumatic. Today's case is one of the most chilling unsolved mysteries on a cold Valentine morning in 1985. A quiet Colorado Springs neighborhood became the scene of an unspeakable horror. A devoted single mom and her 2 young children were found brutally murdered in their home, their bodies bound and beaten, their final moments marked by a terror and struggle. There were no signs of forced entry, suggesting the killer had been invited in. Investigators searched tiresome, questioned hundreds, and narrowed their suspect list to 6. An unusual clue emerged. Months before her death, the mother had placed a personal ad in the newspaper seeking companionship. Had she knowingly welcomed a predator into her home? Years later, a chilling confession from a former soldier regained suspicion. He admitted to a similar crime, another mother and her children murdered in their sleep. He had a disturbing habit, lurking the shadows, watching from windows. In the early 1985, he had been stationed just miles from the scene of the unsolved massacre. Despite eerie parallels, no solid evidence linked him to the crime. Investigators hinted a long suspected culprit, but the case remains unsolved. Decades later, the truth still lingers in the shadows, waiting to be uncovered. This is the case of Cassandra Rundle, Detrick and Melanie Sturm. The winter of 1985 had settled over Colorado Springs, casting long shadows over the quiet neighborhood. On Laclede Street, nestled among modest homes, lived Cassandra, a 37-year-old single mother devoted to her 2 children, 12-year-old Detrick and 10-year-old Melanie. She had worked tiresome to provide for them, balancing her role as a mother with ambition of attending law school. But none of them could have foreseen the horror that await them on Valentine's Day. Cassandra's journey had taken her from Morgantown, West Virginia, where she married her high school sweetheart, Steve Sturm, and moved to Colorado. Their union brought 2 beautiful children, but their marriage did not last. After Steve moved to Ohio, following their 1974 divorce, Cassandra retained custody of Detrick and Melanie. Determined to build a future for them, she pursued a degree in behavioral science at the University of Southern Colorado. It was there that she met Douglas Pelzer, a man who became her second husband. Despite their eventually divorce, remained close friends. By 1985, Cassandra had craved out a stable life. She worked as an assistant at the Gate Land Company and advocated for victims at the Rape Coalition of Colorado Springs. Her children were bright and compassionate. They thrived in the gifted program. Their small family had its struggles, but there was love, warmth, and there was hope for better days ahead. 2 nights before Valentine's Day, Douglas took Cassandra and her children to see the newly released Witness. The next evening, he took Cassandra to dinner. When he called her later, he had the distant impression that she was not alone. He would never hear her voice again. On the morning of February 14, Douglas arrived at Cassandra's home with Valentine's Day gifts, including a record album he had brought for her. The shades were drawn, unusual for a house that should have been stirring with morning routines. A sense of uneasy crept over him as he reached for his key to let himself in. What he found would haunt him forever. Cassandra lay nude on her bed, bound at the wrists and ankles with her pantyhose. She'd been brutally beaten and sexually assaulted before strangled to death. Down the hall, little Melanie's partially clothed body was sprawled on the floor of her bedroom. She too had been bound, sexually assaulted, and beaten so savagely that her skull was fractured. The signs of struggles, a bloody wrist, overturned furniture, spoke to a desperate fight for survival. In the ajar room, Detrick was found lifeless on the floor. The bloodstain on the hockey stick were chilling, evidence that it wasn't just an object, but the very weapon used to beat the victim senseless. The fact that his sister was found partially dressed in her nightclothes only deepened the mystery, but it was Detrick's attire that raised his eyebrows. While his sister was still caught in the remnants of the slumber, he was dressed in street clothes, an odd detail, almost as if he'd been out, returning just as the crime unfolded into his house. A neighbor report sent shivers down the spine. She spotted Detrick outside the front of his home around 7 a.m., only to watch him disappear back inside moments later. The timing seemed too perfect. The window between the brief appearance and the brutal murder of his mom and sisters was unraveling narrow. And then there were the bets, made, as though the family had risen early, gone about their morning routine, and then everything had shattered. The crime, it seemed, had been set in motion sometime after they awoke, somewhere between 7 a.m. and 10:30 a.m., and the unthinkable tragedy that follows. Something sinister had taken place in that fragile space of time. The Colorado Springs Police Department combed through the crime scene, calling in the Colorado Bureau of Investigation for the support. The brutality of the murder suggests a deeply disturbing killer, and the lack of forced entry pointed to someone Cassandra had willingly let inside. Investigators quickly ruled out both Douglas and Cassandra's first husband, Steve, as a suspect. Even her unnamed boyfriend, who had showed up at the house that morning after she failed to arrive at work, was not considered a prime lead. Another intriguing piece of the puzzle came from the interview of Cassandra's neighbor, David Boardman. His account added a layer of complexity to the timeline, one that casts further suspicion on the surrounding circumstance of Cassandra's murder. According to Dave, Douglas had made a troubling statement about Cassandra during a phone call he had with her on the 13th. Dave recounted Douglas saying that Cassandra had someone there at the time of the phone call and had mentioned she would try to get rid of him. Dave speculated that the person Cassandra had been speaking about could have been someone that she picked up at the bar earlier that evening and brought home. The suggestion that Cassandra may have invited a stranger into the home, someone she met at a bar, seemed not possible.
If Pelzer's comment were accurate, it raised the unsettling possibility that Cassandra's fatal encounter was tied to a man who had been estranged to her, someone whose identity remained unknown. Adding another layer of confusion to the timeline, it was reported that Cassandra and Detrick had arrived home from a function at around 8 p.m. on the 13th, and that Melanie, Detrick's sister, had been dropped off at 8:30 p.m. The specifics of the function were unclear, but it was speculated that it might have been a dinner event. However, if Boardman's account was accurate, suggesting Cassandra had someone at her house when Douglas called, then Rundle must have gone out to a bar after dropping off Melanie. This raised further question about the family's movement that night, casting doubt on the events leading up to the tragic deaths. The ambiguity of the timeline, combined with the possibility of Cassandra interacting with a stranger, made it increasingly difficult to piece together the truth of what happened that fateful evening. But just as the case seemed to settle into familiar patterns, something unusual came to light that changed everything. In July of 1984, 7 months before the crime took place, Cassandra had placed a personal ad in the newspaper, the Colorado Springs Sun, which read, quote, "Blonde, green eyes, 5 feet 2 inches, 95 pounds, seeking a rugged individualist. I'm a free spirit, independent, well-educated, somewhat shy, sensitive, and enjoy life. I'm a one-man woman looking for a good man. Please send a photo and a short letter," end quote. 1 month later, she placed a second ad in the paper, and it read, quote, "Warm, together, bright, beautiful, and modest lady, seeking friendship with a gentleman of quality and character." The whole personal ads angle would prompt some media outlets to refer to the crimes as the Lonely Heart Murderers. Douglas, Cassandra's ex-husband, had voiced his concerns to her about the potential dangers of placing such ads, warning that it might attract the wrong kind of attention. But as a natural shy woman, Cassandra had seen it as her best opportunity to meet new people, her chance to break out of her shell and find connection. She went on lunch dates with at least a dozen of men who replied, seeking companionship, in a world that often seemed too solitary. But those casual meetings would take on a much darker significance when it was theorized that one of those men could have been the one to walk through her door on that fateful night, only to become the very person responsible for her death and the deaths of her children. There were no signs of forced entry at the house, which led investigators to believe that Cassandra might have invited someone inside. Douglas himself believed that Cassandra had been speaking with a visitor during their final phone call, a detail that only added to the suspicion. The possibility that one of those strangers from her personal ads could have turned violent hung in the air, and the police launched a thorough investigation into every man who had responded to her ads. Yet despite their best efforts, they were unable to track down and identify all the individuals who had contacted her, leaving many questions unanswered. The investigation grew exhaustive. In total, more than 400 people were interviewed. But after a year of relentless work, investigators had only narrowed their list of potential suspects down to 6. 6 individuals who personally knew the victims. The leads grew cold, and the cases seemed to stall. At one point, a grand jury was convened to assess whether there was enough evidence to charge anyone with a crime. But despite the intense scrutiny, no charges were ever filed. The case remained unsolved, the truth locked away in the shadows, with only the chilling possibility that one of those faceless men from the personal ads had played a part in the unimaginable tragedy. The investigation took another unexpected turn when Richard Rundle, Cassandra's father, a former prosecutor, stepped in, a man who understood the weight of the law. He was determined to seek justice for his daughter. In a move that would stir the case even further, he offered a $10,000 reward for information leading to an arrest. The promise hung heavily in the air, an invitation for answers, but also a dark omen. Despite this new lead, the investigation only seemed to deepen the mystery surrounding Cassandra's tragic death. As the investigators unfolded, The initial suspects were cleared, but the complications didn't end there. There was another, more personal issue at play, one that would eventually bring the Rundle family face to face with Douglas in a courtroom. It all started with the insurance policy, a $28,000 double indemnity policy that Cassandra had originally named Douglas as the beneficiary for when they were married. However, after their divorce, Cassandra neglected to remove his name from the policy, a seemingly small oversight, yet a costly one. Douglas, sensing an opportunity in the overlooked detail, attempted to claim the payout. But the Rundle family wasn't about to let him walk away with the money. They took him to court, fighting vigorously to prevent him from collecting. It seemed like a straightforward legal matter until Douglas, perhaps realizing the storm it would cause, decided to withdraw his claim. Yet by that point, the damage had already been done. The specter of greed, the lingering taint of a forgotten name on the insurance policy, cast an unsettling shadow over the entire case. Where once there had been certainty, but now there was only doubt. Only on the cold morning of January the 9th, 1992, a man walked into a police station in Fayetteville, North Carolina. His name was Philip Edward Wilkinson, a 24-year-old former Army soldier, and he wasn't alone. A local pastor accompanied him, his presence a silent testament to the weight of what Wilkinson was about to confess. His conscience, Wilkinson said, had been tormenting him for months. He could no longer carry the burden of his crime. The officers listened as he began to speak. His words would soon unravel the details of a nightmare, one that had left an entire family dead and a community in shock. Just 5 months earlier, on the night of July 29, 1991, inside the quiet Fayetteville apartment, 38-year-old Judy Hudson and her 2 children, 19-year-old Crystal and 11-year-old Larry Jr., were brutally murdered. The case had gone unsolved, but now Wilkinson was telling them exactly what happened. That night, he had been outside their home, peering through the sliding glass door. His eyes had settled on Crystal, who was sleeping on the couch, unaware of the horror about to unfold. A bowling pin laid abandoned in the yard. Wilkinson grabbed it, his mind made up. He shattered the door and slipped inside. Crystal woke to find a stranger hovering over her. Wilkinson touched her, his hands violating the fragile boundary between dream and waking terror. As panic filled her eyes, he overpowered her, forcing himself upon her. Then, in a sudden, frenzied explosion of violence, he brought the bowling pin crashing down on her head, again and again, until she was still. But Wilkinson wasn't finished. He crept towards Judy's bedroom. There he repeated his sickening act, assaulting the mother before bludgeoning her to death. The sound of violence should have woken the household, but young Larry Jr. remained asleep, unaware of the monster lurking in his home. Wilkinson found the boy in his room, his small body curled up beneath the covers. Without hesitation, he swung the bowling pin once more. By the time he was finished, 3 lives had been erased.
Sick. Just sick.
Yeah. The next day, Wilkinson vanished. He had been a private first class stationed at Fort Bragg, but he suddenly went AWOL, disappearing without a trace. For months, he roamed free while the Hudson family murder remained an open wound in Fayetteville. It wasn't until guilt consumed him that he finally turned himself in. Wilkinson's confession led to a flood of charges: 3 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of first-degree burglary, 1 count of attempted first-degree rape, 4 counts of first-degree sexual offense, and 2 counts of felonious larceny. There would be no trial. 2.5 years later, he pled to every single charge, sealing his fate. A jury convened for his capital sentencing, and their decision was swift. Wilkinson would be sentenced to death in a gas chamber. His execution was set, but as the final hours ticked away, guards at the Central Prison in Raleigh discovered 2 handwritten suicide notes in his cell. He had planned to take his own life before the state could. Instead, the discovery of those notes delayed his execution. State psychiatrists were ordered to evaluate him, questioning whether he was mentally competent to face death. After their review, they ruled that he was indeed fit to be executed. But Wilkinson wasn't done fighting. He filed appeal after appeal, each one an attempt to escape the fate he had once surrendered to. One by one, those appeals were denied. Yet despite the justice system's resolve, the state of North Carolina placed a moratorium on executions before Wilkinson's sentence could be carried out. Now, decades later, he remains on death row at Central Prison, alive, but with no hope of ever walking free. A man who once tried to escape his crimes now waits in the shadows of a punishment that may never come. Richard Rundle, Cassandra's father, a former prosecutor, was convinced that Wilkinson had been responsible for his daughter and grandchildren's murders. He had traveled to North Carolina to attend Wilkinson's sentencing hearing, but despite the chilling parallels, authorities hesitated. Military records suggested Wilkinson had been in South Korea when the Rundle family was slain, though inconsistencies in his records left room for doubt. The years passed, and the case remained unsolved. In 2012, retired detective Dick Raisler hinted that investigators had long suspected one individual, but lacked the evidence to convict. "If I were on the jury with the suspect in mind, I wouldn't convict them either," he admitted, "and I know more than the jury will ever know." DNA evidence was entered into a national database, yet no match was ever found. Wilkinson remains on death row for the Hudson family murders, but he has never confessed to Cassandra, Detrick, and Melanie's death. To this day, the case lingers in the cold shadows of unsolved mysteries, the truth buried somewhere within the secrets of that fateful Valentine's Day.
Before we end this case, let's remember the people that lost their lives. Cassandra was a devoted mother, a bright, compassionate woman who worked tirelessly to build a better future for herself and her two children. She had a warmth that drew people in and a quiet strength that guided them through their life hardship. A graduate in behavioral science, she balanced her job with advocated work, always striving to make a difference. Her children, Detrick and Melanie, were the light of her life. Detrick, 12 years old, was intelligent and kind, a boy with a big heart and a bright future ahead of him. He had compassion for learning that made him stand out. Melanie, just 10 years old, was full of life, a sweet and loving girl who adored her mother and her brother. She was the kind of child who made anyone smile. Her laughter filled the homes with warmth. Despite the challenge of being a single mother, Cassandra created a loving household. She wanted the best for her children and worked hard to provide them with a stable, happy life. The three of them were more than just a family. They were a team, bound by love and unbreakable bond. Then on Valentine's Day, the unthinkable happened. That home that once echoed with laughter and love filled silence, leaving behind only questions, grief, and mystery that remained unsolved. Cassandra, Detrick, and Melanie deserve to be remembered, not for how their life ended, but the love, warmth, and joy they brought in the world. Their story is not just one of tragedy, but of a family who, even in the face of the unknown, will never be forgotten. This is the case of Cassandra, Detrick, and Melanie. Now let's get into some theories.
Let's get into some theories.
You or me?
Ladies first.
Thank you. When I did this case, I don't know if you remember when I was writing it, I was like, oh my God, I feel like I know who it is.
Yeah.
And I told you, like, I didn't want to tell you yet. So I think it was the neighbor. And why I said, if you guys really listen and sit back of what he was saying, he said, oh yeah, she went out to the bar and all that stuff.
How did he know?
He just assumed because he said that the ex-husband, Douglas, said that she had somebody over there. But if you guys recall, she had an unnamed boyfriend. They never came out with his name or anything like that. He came after the bodies was found.
The coworker.
Yes. So if you remember, she said, I am a one-man woman.
Mhm.
I don't do that. So if she already had a man, why would she go out to a bar and pick up another man? And plus, you remember she said in her personal ad, I am very, very shy. The only reason she did a personal ad because she felt more comfortable than going out and finding somebody. So why would she have a boyfriend? That's great one.
She got a boyfriend after the ads? I wonder
Yes.
how much after.
Well, we don't know when the boyfriend and her really start dating, so I can't answer that question.
Because that's what I'm saying. Like, the neighbor might have some information, because if she has a boyfriend and she's still putting out these ads.
Well, the ads stopped. Like, she did the first two, and then she just stopped doing them.
But people that see those ads are still going to keep trying to communicate with her.
Right. I agree with you on that, but I feel like she was done looking for, like, somebody from a personal ad. She found somebody.
You believe?
I feel like I know her, okay? Like, this case, it's not even funny, guys, because for some reason, this case, when I was doing it, I felt kind of connected to her a little bit, because she did a personal ad because she wanted to find love. She was a dedicated mother. Also, the saddest part, she helped a lot of rape victims. And this is how she went out. And it's so sad because she was out there trying to help them, make them stronger, and like learn to live what happened to them. And then this happened to her.
I mean, what I'm saying is, say she had her boyfriend, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what if other guys were still trying to get with her?
Yes.
She could entertain that, or she could not, which is another possibility to why that happened to her.
I think, because I feel like I know her, she did not entertain them no more. I know y'all
that's your theory, but I have another one. So we just agree to disagree, but I'm saying there's a possibility that she was entertaining somebody else.
No, I don't. Only reason I said it, in Cassandra words, she said she is a one-man woman. She do not want multiple boyfriends or entertaining guys. As I was saying, it was interrupted, because I'm a ride for my chick right here, okay? I'm a ride for her. I don't believe that she was dating other guys after she found her boyfriend. I feel like they was committed and was together. What I'm trying to make, I still haven't proved my point about the neighbor. My thing with the neighbor is her window, as a lot of people said in the case, her window was so short from what he said. She got home around 8 o'clock with her kids. She had dinner with her ex-husband, got home around 8. Then her daughter came home around 8:30. They said, and I read a thing with her ex-husband, she would not leave her kids at home by themselves. So for him to say, oh, she went out, that's another thing I don't know if the police look into. She would not leave her kids at home. Her daughter didn't go with her. Her daughter was at a play date. I don't know. I just feel like the neighbor, he seemed very, like, he wanted to get the ex-husband in trouble so much. He's like, oh, yeah, the ex-husband said this to me. He said this to me. He said this. But it's like, why are you trying to put the ex-husband out? Like, why are you pointing fingers? To me, if she was going to let somebody in, it would have been him. Because they said that the doors was open. What if he had a crush on her and he want to get with her and he was trying to like convince her like, hey, stop looking at all the other folks. I'm here.
It could have been anybody, honestly. She went out with her ex-husband. Yeah, her son might have been there, but why are you going out with your ex-husband if you have a boyfriend? There's always the possibility that other guys are going to try and engage. Now, the guy that showed up, he could have been somebody that she previously talked to, that she also felt comfortable with. Maybe she friend-zoned him, but he didn't know that. She's a one-man woman. How many guys want to hear that? How many guys want that? And it just takes the wrong guy to ruin it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just saying there is a possibility that she was maybe doing something innocent, but it also was perceived as bad, because if you're going out with your ex-wife, I'm going to feel some type of way about it. I don't care if you go with Sienna. Like, at the end of the day, I'm not comfortable you going out with your ex-wife. Like, why? What's the reason?
Can I jump in?
Go ahead.
because I'm gonna protect my Cassandra. Her and her ex-husband were friends. Platonic as is, I know people believe that exes can't be friends, but it seemed that he was a father figure for her kids because the bio dad was gone. Like, he really didn't care, but he was around. I mean, him bringing her a Valentine's Day gift, okay, I seemed kind of icky about it, but it seemed that she did have a boyfriend. I'll listen to a podcast and I'll put the podcast in. It went more in detail about it. That said that her boyfriend and her just recently started dating. I feel like they said like a month or a couple weeks. So it's like it was a new relationship. Nobody knew about them in a relationship until he came to the crime scene to pick her up because she didn't go to work. He was like, okay, why she's in work? Let me go pick her up.
Why is he a secret?
I don't know. Sometimes people don't want to tell their business. That's how I was. You used to get mad at me. You're like, oh, why you not saying like, put me on Facebook as in a relationship and stuff like that. Some people do like us if it's new too. Like, I'm the type of person, when I was back then dating, it was hard telling your friends like, oh, I'm dating so-and-so. And then 2 weeks later, you're not talking or dealing with them no more. And you have to explain to your friends like, yeah, I'm not talking to them. It get kind of repetitive and you don't want to keep doing that. I don't know if she kept him a secret because she didn't want nobody knowing her relationship yet. We don't know what was going through her head. But my prime suspect, and I don't know if the police think he is a suspect, is the neighbor Dave. Because when you was reading, they did say that they have a suspect in mind, but they just don't have the evidence. Because you remember you saying that if they take it to trial, the jury would not convict him. So that's another thing you have to think about. But also, somebody with this type of crime, I don't know if they stop. Like, you really murder them, like, bad.
I feel like the person that committed the crime saw her as somebody who was cheating because she was surrounded by so many guys. And honestly, when you start dating, there's like so many people that are trying to, it takes a while for them to all die down kind of thing. Like, you could see them as friends or she could see them as friends, but they want something else. And even though like this is not a good excuse or it's not to justify whatever the perpetrator did, but I wonder, because this guy was sick, twisted, like beyond anything understandable. But I wonder, like, he took it out clearly on her, but that's why also he decided to pursue the daughter. And then the son, it says that he kind of came after everything had already been done.
You know what? One thing as you was talking, I don't know if you see me on YouTube, I'm shocked. I wonder, we always think it's Cassandra was the main person he was out there. What if it's the daughter? That the daughter was the main person? Because you got to think about how brutal attacked that she was. Like Cassandra, they say like she was bound, she was attacked, but the daughter went through the most. Like she really, even though she fought, but it seemed that he went for her
First?
Well, it doesn't. It said they feel like Cassandra was first, then her, then the kids. What if the man? Because it seemed like to me personally, I feel like he kind of went for the daughter. I'm thinking about the furniture was like overturned. Everything was just messed up. She was bound. Like he did the most to her.
Yeah.
What if the police always look at Cassandra and couldn't find a lead, but they were really looking at her?
All right, so let's transition a little bit. Let's talk about Philip Wilkinson. He did the same thing, but to another family. He confessed to those crimes, but not to this one. What are your thoughts?
I don't think he did it because sometimes you learn from your murders. I feel like with him, he bound Cassandra and her kids, right? But the new one, he didn't bind them. So that's kind of like, he would keep that fact. He'll do it to a new family. So for him not to do that, I don't see him.
Right.
For some reason, I don't know. I don't know if we ever thought of the daughter. I feel like every time I see people talk about it, they always talk about the mother. But one thing I read online, and I'm saying to every woman out there or even every father out there, when you're on a dating site, do not put your kids' picture out there.
That's what I was going to say. How did they know Cassandra had kids? Why would she openly just give that information?
Well, when they did like her information, like when they read the person ad, she never said she had kids. But think about when you're on a date, she probably said, yeah, I have 2 kids, a little girl, a little boy. She was proud of her kids. She probably did mention them or even had a little picture of them in her wallet. Did they have wallet? They didn't have wallet. A picture of them. Like, oh, look at their school picture. And what if the predator like, oh my God, like, the little girl. We don't know what kind of, person she was out there dating. But word of advice that I would love to put out there is do not put your kids on your dating site. Do not put a picture. If you didn't have to say, I want to put their ages. I would say, hey, I have 3 kids. That's it. You're going to know. Until you really gain and give a feel about them, they should not know really any information on your kids. And one thing, look out for if they keep bringing up your kids. Like, oh, how your kid? Oh, you said this about your kid. If they bring up facts that you didn't even say about your kids, cut them off. Because it's very important, because I saw this post on TikTok that the man actually, he did not want the mother. He wanted her daughter. So when they started dating, he was more trying to get a bung with the daughter to groom her. But the daughter no, I don't want to be around you. Like, she was a teenager. He actually drugged her and SA her.
Wow.
But the mother put a picture of her family together, the daughter, and he saw that and he was attracted to the daughter.
Right.
I don't know. It's a neighbor to me. I feel like, think about it, a neighbor, he watching her the most. You know what I'm saying?
Another thing that was a red flag for me was the ex-husband. Why was he trying to cash out on her life policy? $28,000.
That's a lot of money back then.
So the ex-husband, he was clearly trying to get her back. I don't know what it is about some people, but whenever they know that the person is moving on, that's when they're like, no, come back. So what if he decided, because he was taking her out to eat, he was bringing her a Valentine's Day gift. It almost seems like he was pursuing her. And then maybe he got rejected. Maybe she said, hey, I'm seeing someone. Or, hey, maybe this is inappropriate.
One thing we said in the case, he brought her a gift. He didn't bring the kids a gift. He brought her an album.
And then he was the last person known to see her.
Also talked because he called her on the phone.
That was not his bio daughter. And then he was trying to cash out on a policy. I have 2 theories. It could be the ex-husband, or it could be somebody from the ad. Okay. Somebody bad that she met, was too trusting with the information, and this person obviously didn't take too well that she moved on.
Okay.
Those are my theories.
My theories. I do say it was the neighbor. Some reason I believe that they probably was after the daughter than the mom. Because I always say when you look at a case and there's multiple people getting murdered, you always look at the one who had the most vicious death. And it seemed like it was the daughter. What if they went and tied the mom off, tied the mom and they went to the daughter room? It seemed like because she had the struggle the most. Like, she was really fighting for everything.
It seems like it was personal. Did they know the daughter on a deeper level? If so,
I mean, we don't know.
If so, it kind of goes with the ex-husband theory. Like, he watched her grow up, but you don't know if she was bratty, or you don't know if she made him upset, or you don't know what it was. But I don't know, that to me, that kind of, if it is him, like.
But that's a window though, because they said it was killed in the morning from 7 a.m. to 10:30. That means he committed the murder. He had to go back home, clean himself off. And think about this, the daughter really fought for her life. So he would have some type of scratch marks or marks on his body. They said the daughter, she had the most, she fought, furniture was overturned, everything. So it seemed like if he did it, he would have had some type of, marks a little bit.
Yeah.
For killing 3 people and you came out no marks, that's impossible.
I don't know. To me, it's just the money. The fact that you're trying to do it and then you change your mind all of a sudden because you're getting too much smoke.
Shoot, if you want, so sorry, don't judge me for saying this. If you want to murder, why did you kill him so vicious? Dang.
It was personal.
I know, I'm just saying, just dang. And I wonder, like, you think about the neighbor, she said that she saw the boy. I wonder if the kid was already inside and heard him come in and, was quiet.
The neighbor did kind of hint that it was the ex-husband.
I wonder with the neighbor, think about this. Why was he watching her house so much? He was like, oh yeah, she went out to a bar. How did you know that?
Well, did he have any marks or scuffs on him?
There was when I saw this little information about him, a lot of people miss over that. That's why I made sure that was inside the case. because he said that little line and like the police ran what he said. But I'm like, did they really ever look into him?
But I believe that if he had any kind of mark or bruising or bleeding, they would have been like, hey, that's sus to me.
I mean, if
They
really
interviewed him.
if they really look into him. But I wonder if that's the one that the detective got in mind, because the detective said, we have somebody in mind. But the problem is, you have the DNA. I watch a lot of TV shows, true crime. They can easily get their trash and get like saliva from a cup or something like that they use and run the DNA. So if you have this person in mind, why don't we get the DNA? This case right here, I'm so sorry that this case had to come out on Valentine's Day. It's probably love and sunshines and rainbow. But this case is wow. Just wow.
It's honestly a precaution because you think it is going to be all love and rainbow and flowers. But you have to be really careful who you meet and who you share your information with, who you invite inside your home with your family. I honestly don't think that it was Philip Wilkinson because he had remorse and he would have said everything. At the end of the day, if you're going to be on death row, you might as well just give everybody the peace that they deserve.
Just complete. He's still on death row. Like, God. I mean, if he's on death row that much, no offense or nothing. I don't know a lot about death row, but I know if they have suicide thoughts, they like, oh, no, we can't kill him. To me, I'm like, I don't know. The murder that he did.
Yeah, it was bad.
We're not going to talk about death row and stuff like that in this podcast, but tell us your theories on this case. Tell us what you believe. Comment or even inbox me. I actually last week, to say a lot before we end, I had somebody come to me about information about a case that we actually covered. They had so much, they knew so much details. They actually looked into this case to help the police solve it. They had the case files and everything. It was a Julie Patterson case. I'm just going to put that there. I think we might actually bring this person on our podcast one day and tell you what he said. Let me know if you think we should bring him on. Please follow us on all social medias. Give us that 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and also YouTube. Watch our YouTube. See our beautiful face. Look at my sweater too when you go in there. My case so pretty, right? This is a case. Please.
Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Stay safe.
And go on dating sites.
Keep those that you love safe.
And be safe on dating sites. This is Lesbian Detectives. I'm Sierra.
And I'm Elizabeth.
And don't forget, everybody's a suspect
until proven innocent.
Bye.
Bye.
Lesbian Detectives. Unsolved cases. She's still missing. Yeah, they haven't found her yet. Well, let's talk about it.
They say he vanished without a trace. Could it be a psychotic break? Or a tragic accident? Police don't know where the body went. Unsolved murders, body still missing. That's unheard. Where's the witness? Lesbian detectives, what's going on? City on high alert, this out the norm. He did what, the who? Man, that ain't real, these crimes ain't true. Then come uncover these theories with us. We live right now, tuning in is a must.
Lesbian Detectives. Lesbian Detectives. We about to start the show, so get your popcorn ready, let's go. Pay attention to the message I present to you, the Lesbian Detectives.